Is the streaming live, Mr. Everson?
It will be momentarily, not yet.
All right, let's go ahead and get that started.
I think it's up now.
All right. We will call this Caddo Parish Commission work session agenda to order. It is June 15th at 3:32. Mr. Everson, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hopkins.
Present.
Commissioner Johnson.
Present.
Commissioner Jackson. Commissioner Young. Commissioner Burrell.
Yeah.
Commissioner Cawthorn.
Present.
Commissioner Gage Watts. Commissioner Talaferro.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Atkins.
Here.
Commissioner Chavez.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Lazarus. And
Here.
Commissioner Epperson.
Present. I'm back in town.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. We have 8 present.
Thank you, Mr. Everson. Commissioners, we will have our invocation by Commissioner Taliaferro and our Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you on behalf of a hurting nation, a nation that is thirsty for a revival, Lord, for the presence of you and the spirit of your healing water. We are tired of the enemy getting all our time taken away from worshiping you, Lord. We are in a wilderness and we need your grace to bring us out. We are dehydrated of your spirit. And be with us today, Lord, as we serve those in our community and help us make those wise decisions for the betterment of all that we serve. In the precious blood of your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Mr. Talaferro, how are you?
I am well, Marshall. How are you, brother?
I am doing just fine. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I ask all individuals to please stand. All military, active, reserve, and veterans, hand to brow. All civilians, hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Can everybody hear? Hello? Maria, Commissioner Chavez, I think you're muted.
How's that?
There we go. Now we got you.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Talaferro, and thank you, Vice President. Mr. Everson, I believe we do have an agenda addition. Is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I have, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner Epperson.
Yeah, I like an agenda addition relative to the renaming of Fort Polk. Did you read me?
Yes. Is that your motion?
Well, I give the
We got a motion.
the motion.
The agenda.
Okay, you like for me to read it?
Commissioner Epperson, you're
You like for me to read it?
yes, sir.
Okay, does it
In
make
the
it?
event that the military, that military posts are renamed, I urge that Congress rename Fort Polk on behalf of a Louisiana Medal of Honor recipient of the Vietnam War era. It's my agenda addition.
Second.
Okay. Seconded by, was that Vice President?
Yes.
All right. Commissioners, we have to expand the agenda, add it. We also have to give public comment to allow to speak for or against. Mr. Everson, what's the phone number that the citizens may call in to speak for or against the expansion of the agenda and the agenda addition?
Citizens are welcome to call in at 318-226-6596. And hopefully they will like our new microphones that I think should work better.
Thank you, Mr. Everson. Citizens, we will now allow for either speaking for or against the expansion of the agenda. And obviously, because we're doing via Zoom, whether you want to speak for or against, go ahead and call that phone number and we can get you on the board to speak. We will allow about a minute just if anybody wants to call. And the reason for the expansion, Commissioner Epperson would like to make the motion or the agenda addition that in the case that Fort Polk is renamed, that we urge the renaming body to rename it after a Louisiana Soldier Medal of Honor recipient.
Of the Vietnam War era.
Vietnam War era. Anybody calling, Mr. Everson?
We haven't received any.
Okay. Let's do roll call vote on expansion of the agenda to add the addition.
Okay, Commissioner Hopkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson, Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell. Commissioner Burrell, I didn't hear you. Are you there?
He's muted.
That's what I thought. Commissioner Burrell, can you give us your vote?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I heard that. Commissioner Cawthorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Gage Watts,
Yes.
Commissioner Taliaferro,
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lazarus,
Yes.
and, oh, great, and Commissioner Epperson.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries with all present voting yes, and that's 10 yeses and 2 absent.
All right. That passes. So we move on besides agenda additions, citizens' comments.
We have one citizen's comment today, and today's citizen comment comes from John Glover. And I will read it exactly as it was received. She says, the purpose of my contact is to forward my comments to be read into today's Caddo Parish work session. Thank you and God bless. Number 1 is 11.1, authorizing the introduction of 5960 of 2020. An NGO recipient has to submit accounting of the funds given by the Caddo Parish Commission and the year expended. Is that correct? Seemingly, it would be that the NGO recipient did not exhaust its funding for whatever reason. Why the consideration of reappropriating of these funds at this juncture, 6 months into the year? Was there not a new application submitted for the 2020 year? If what is that status? And then the second one is on 11.2, which is authorizing resolution number 41 of 2020. And it says, what is this really about? The resolution is quite confusing. After that, she says resolution number 43. What law enforcement entity does this resolution address? And then on authorizing resolution number 44, this resolution to me supports a continuing of what we say we are working to eradicate, division and divisiveness. Why is this needed or necessary? He then goes on under authorized resolution 45 to say, though African Americans have been recipients of practices that led or lead to premature death due to overreach of police officers, unscrupulous police officers, why the distinction and not just a policy for the whole? Just asking. And then her final comment is on resolution number 48. It says, why? What specifics are we asking? Is there data that supports that 10 bases and other Department of Defense locations practicing or promoting segregation are being met by service members and others who visit these locations, all predicated on Confederate and Confederacy ideology? If so, please provide it. And that concludes Ms. Glover's comments. We did receive another comment. This comment is from Miss Patricia Smith. And Ms. Smith says, I am against Resolution 48 in full. We cannot erase history to improve the future. I want to know who is paying for Resolution 47 and Ordinance 5959. Resolution 46 is already illegal. Those are her comments. And that concludes the public comments that we've received.
46. Okay, thank you, Mr. Everson. I think, and also, citizens, if you want, you can call into that number, 318-226-6596 to be on the public comments. We'll allow about 30 seconds for that. All right, Mr. Everson, anybody on the hotline?
We don't have anybody at the moment who's called in.
Okay, we will move along to visitors.
Under visitors, the first visitor that we have scheduled is our City of Shreveport Marshal, Charlie Caldwell, who Commissioner Epperson invited. And he is on the line with us, joined by his
Chief Deputy.
Mr. Jefferson.
Yeah.
Would like to start, Tim.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Epperson. I thought I heard somebody talking. It's very low, but Commissioner Epperson, if you can kick us off, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Marshall Caldwell, and is that Deputy Jefferson?
Chief Jefferson, yes, sir.
Right, we appreciate you coming. I did not expect no less from Marshall Caldwell, knowing his tenure as the city marshal. He's always been here for us. No reservations everywhere within the community, and we appreciate your efforts. Of course, we know the situation relative to law enforcement and the George Floyd, and we can go all the way back during my tenure to Rodney King, and I can go back basically almost to being about 10, 11 years old in my hometown, hearing things relative to law enforcement as to unequal treatment, primarily of African Americans, and that's back in the 50s. However, a lot of my constituents had called, and as well as people, not only my direct constituents, but people from all over. And Marshall Caldwell, we've always had a relationship. When I hold my public meetings, you are always there in force. And this year, my first public meeting was council. It was scheduled to be March the 12th. So we wanted to give persons that may not have that's not familiar with your organization to find out exactly what you do. Is it primarily urban or is it in the rural areas? So I'll start out. My first question is, are your deputies under and yourself under state civil service guidelines?
Yes, we are under, no, we're not under the civil service guidelines, but we are post-certified, by the state of Louisiana, just the sheriff's office, just as the Shreveport Police Department is peace officer standard and training course. So all of us have completed a basic police academy, just as all law enforcement have. We have arrest, authority and powers to do so. Yes, granted by the state.
Okay. Are your deputies members of any union or any association or collective organization that determines your policy as well as disciplinary actions of your department?
Yes, sir. We operate on the guidelines of our office. We have our own policy and procedure, but we have to mandate it, and it has to go through the state as well. So everything is mandated in the state, and we have to operate under the regulations and rules of the state of Louisiana and of the city of Shreveport and the parish of Caddo.
Okay, but what also, are your deputies or any members of your organization unionized or under any association?
We're not unionized, but we do have associations that we are affiliated with our National Constables and Marshals Association and our state Marshals and Constables Association, and also members of other organizations as well, Mr. Anderson.
Okay, your training is the same as the regular municipal police departments, sheriffs, state troopers, etc. You all take the same training courses?
Yes, sir. We're affiliated with a lot of the, we've worked and trained with state police, officers throughout the state, officers in other states as well, Commissioner. Myself and several of my deputies are trained, by PAC-C, and we're national hostage and crisis negotiators. And nationally, we're, through different agencies, we are also through Homeland Security trained through. We're trained in several the FBI leadership organization on supervisory command leadership, and executive leadership. So my deputies are well versed in training and in several different areas. I have probably about 15 to 16 out of 37 deputies. I have about 15 to 16 of them that are certified instructors in various areas, self-defense, explosives. I mean, you name it, we're trained. We train 6 times a year, probably a little bit more than a lot of these other local agencies. And our authority goes through the city of Shreveport and outside into the parish, because I have Ward 4 of Caddo Parish.
Okay, does any of the training includes diversity, racial sensitivity, dealing with mental situations, sexual situations, and other domestic circumstances?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We, matter of fact, we're getting ready to do another PTSD class here. We're going to be hosting it here at the Marshal's Office Training Center in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be hosting that, and it's going to involve officers around the state, if not out of the state as well, that will be joining us in reference to that. Sensitivity training, of course, versatility training, dealing with all races of people, all walks of life, ethnic backgrounds, and so forth. Yes, sir. Every year, Mr. Everson, we have to sign up through the internet and do state tests through the state commission. I think every officer has to take these. It's part of your state supplemental pay. To continue your state supplemental pay, you have to continue these classes in order to be recognized, and they have to be completed in order for your state supplemental pay to continue. Yes.
Okay. Has any police brutality or ethical complaints, suits been filed against any of your officers?
No, sir. I'm very pleased with that, and I blame that on the training. Why we haven't had any lawsuits filed against us. We have 0 suits filed against us at this time, and I'm very pleased with that. And like I say, that goes back to the way the deputies are trained and continue to train in every aspect of how to treat and how to talk with the public. So I think that has helped us tremendously, Commissioner Evans.
Marshal Caldwell, how long have you been in that position?
I've been in this elected position since 2008. I was appointed early 2008, so right at almost 13 years, sir.
Did you come in under former Marshal Jimmy Dove?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Jimmy appointed me as I was his chief deputy, and as the state appointment goes, that's the only individual that can fulfill the position of the marshal, in his capacity or in his absence, would be his chief deputy at that time. And so Jimmy did, decided to retire early, because of, the Haynesville shell situation. And he appointed me probably about 7 months or 8 months into the tenure. So I had eight months to be the marshal at that time. as acting or appointed marshal by Marshal Jimmy Duff before being elected later that next following year.
How many female deputies do you currently have on staff?
Okay, I want to say we have about 7.
7?
Yes, sir.
How many female deputies did you have on staff once you became elected when you initially took over?
Well, I've hired several of them since I've been in office. We had, I think, 2 or 3 at that time, but I think I've hired at least about 4 since I've been the marshal, Ms. Jefferson. And I try to, keep it across the board. And the females train just as us guys do. I feel that they have been through the academy, been through the police academy, and the guys have the training. The females should have the same training that the guys do. I don't discriminate when it comes to that. I believe straight across the board, everybody should have equal training.
Hey, Commissioner Epperson, I wanted to interject really quick. Thank you, Marshal Caldwell. I have a lot of citizens that are messaging, asking the purpose of the questions. So I just wanted to get some context. I didn't know. I saw on the agenda that Marshal Caldwell was coming as a visitor, and I didn't know the premise of the Q&A. I've had a couple messages reached out. Did Marshal Caldwell know ahead of time that these questions were going to be answered? And I do obviously know politically what's going on in our state and in our country. I kind of feel like a lot of these questions would be better suited maybe via an email to Marshal Caldwell, or for lack of a better term, I feel like we're preaching to the choir. Marshal Caldwell runs a great staff, has great deputies, and as he stated, I've never heard of anybody complaining about one of the marshals. So I thank you for Marshal coming down here and be willing to answer any of these questions. But I don't know if we're actually getting anywhere. I do have other commissioners on the board, so I'm going to wrap this up and just ask.
Well, wait, Mr. Chairman, you can't just cut me off. The individual that come down, we have the right to offer questions. And ask questions.
Commissioner Epperson, the only dilemma in this situation is he is a visitor, and I don't want Marshal Caldwell to feel like he's being barraged with questions because he doesn't fall under the jurisdiction.
Mr. Chavez, if Marshal Caldwell felt that way, he would have stated so. May I continue?
I mean, I'm totally comfortable with the questioning of the Marshal's office, because anything that we do and we conduct down here at the Marshal's office, there's nothing to hide in the Marshal's office. Everything is, transparent in this office. So any question that you all have, I mean, I'm very glad to answer it, if it's of my knowledge.
I appreciate that, Marshal Caldwell and Mr. Epperson, or Commissioner Epperson. I meant no disrespect. It's that Mr. Caldwell is a gentleman. I knew regardless if he felt comfortable or not, he wouldn't have voiced his opinion about it. So I wanted to make sure that he was okay with this.
He feels I probably
definitely continue
before you all were born. Okay, may I continue?
Absolutely.
All right. Marshal Caldwell, does your deputies participate in any collaborative enforcement efforts such as drug raids, gang abatement, in concert with any federal, state, or other local law enforcement officials?
Yes, sir, Mr. Everton. We have operations running all the time, warrant operations with federal, state, and local authorities. We work pretty well with the U.S. Marshals. We work pretty well with Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office, with Shreveport Police, with state police, with DeSoto Parish Police, with Lincoln Parish Sheriff's Office. We've collaborated with all of these agencies to, make certain task force or special task force. And we go in on a lot of different raids. Like I say, we are post certified. We have done numerous drug raids. We have done numerous warrant operations. We went out on misdemeanor warrants, and it ended up turning into I guess I'd say felony cases, where, we've entered residents and, drugs are present, weapons are present, or individuals that may be on parole are present. So we made numerous arrests in various cases. So we do it all, Ms. Everson. And, and like I say, we go in professional, we go in by procedure, and that's what we do. We just don't go, unprepared. I try to make sure that my deputies always and will be equipped with the necessary instruments and I guess say tools that they'll need when they get out into this, into the field of going into residence, going into different establishments, that they're prepared and they can make it back home to their families safe.
Okay. Marshall Caldwell, what type of community outreach program does your department have as far as interacting and educating with the general public about your department's operations?
Yes, sir. Marshal's office, we have we're the first marshal's office in the state of Louisiana that has the DARE program. I implemented that when I became marshal. I saw the need of it because I speak at a lot of DARE graduations before we even had a DARE officer, a DARE program here in the marshal's office. We deal with the community outreach, that Amnesty Day. We're dealing with the community right there on that Amnesty Day where we're giving back to the community, helping individuals in need, individuals that need that helping hand out in that dealing with amnesty. My Brother's Keeper. We have various organizations and community outreach programs that we participate in. Read Across America, Read Out Loud, you name it. We try to be affiliated with it, especially to further education of the community and of our youth.
Kind of summing it up, Marshall Caldwell, we had spoken at one point about going out and serving warrants for repossession, automobiles, and evictions, and those things can get volatile. Would you explain briefly about what you do there? Is that out in the parish as well as in the city?
Yes, sir. We do it on a daily basis. Maybe I want to say 35,000 to 40,000 documents a year, sometimes more, executing, arrest warrants, court orders on various deals from seizures to sequestrations, to writ of attachments to evictions. They all come, continuously. They never stop. In the situations, this COVID has slowed it down. So we're in full force starting today with the eviction process. They just started the eviction process back up today. So, but even though we have to evict these people, we have to seize their vehicles. We go out on sequestration and housing. We deal with all of the rental companies throughout the city of Shreveport and Caddo Parish. We deal with all of the rental companies to go seize property from that. And we do come into contact with some hostile individuals, which, at that point, yeah, they're renting these items or leasing these vehicles or purchasing to own these vehicles and, show delinquent on them. But that just is you and I and all the commissioners. If we don't pay our mortgage, what happens? We're foreclosed on and we have to be evicted out of that house. So we're just doing a job by court order, and we don't show up at any dwelling or any establishment without those court orders in hand.
Okay. I appreciate you answering those questions, Brother Caldwell, that I had in mind, and hopefully some of my other colleagues have some too. And Mr. Chavez, I really was offended about you interjecting relative to visitors. I've been down here some 23 years. A lot of the things that we're going over now, I helped put them in place. And visitors is one deal on the agenda where we can ask questions. If any other body come down there relative to the end of the situation, we voted to extend the time. Been there half of the night listening to them. So we certainly going to listen to our elected officials because they are the ones that's being paid for by our taxpayers and should be accountable to our taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Epperson, I have Commissioner Burrell on the board and Commissioner Cawthorn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a few questions. Being a new commissioner and having been on the city council and the state, I really appreciate you, Marshall, for coming down and speaking to us and not being offended by any questions that come before you, because again, you are a public servant. We answer questions all the time to the public. I would like for us, from the standpoint of the commission, to use, the tools that we have available, which is the media now, that educate the public. We do more in the line of educating the public by what we do. I mean, we don't do it to harass people. I mean, I don't. I'll take it. I will accept that, but I do like to ask questions because I'm not familiar with it. I can send a list of questions to you, but it'll be only addressed to me. I think every commissioner on there should know, some of the questions that we ask, because we feed off of each other, and it's not to offend you. And I really do, again, appreciate you coming in and not feeling offended by us just asking questions. And I appreciate Commissioner Epperson for asking those questions, because I'm learning. I'm learning what your position is. I got a couple of questions here. I'll start off with this one. If you have a policy infraction of some sort, who institute an investigation on your organization? Is it the state? Is it internal, or is it an independent group, or what have you?
Well, that's a great question, Commissioner Burrell.
I ask great questions. You're gonna find that out.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. That's why we do that. Exactly. Well, it's one of those things, Mr. Burrell, and that's a great question, because what we try to do, we try to eliminate the in-house investigation, because we don't want to have people to think that everything is biased, and we're going to tend to lean to our own deputies, or our own officers. So what we do, we branch out to the state police, and we let an unknown entity, which is a state police, come in, where we have no connection, unless we work in operations with them. But we let them do the investigation. They come in and conduct the investigation. If something is happening in the marshal's office that they feel that's unethical, something that's been done, wrong or something like that, or the attorney general would investigate our office. So it's no in-house investigation done here.
Well, do you initiate them? Do you initiate them to do it, or do they have to find out that there's something going on, and then they just come in and do it?
Well, if there's a complaint, Commissioner Burrell, that they would come in. Like I say, I hold my office to a high standard, my deputies to a high standard. If they're not doing what they're supposed to do to please the public, because the public is our employee. That's the way I look at it. That's the way I stand. The public is our employee, and we work for the citizens of Shreveport and Caddo Parish. So we have to abide by them. So when they come in, if they feel that something's been done unethical, that's when the state gets involved to check out that, or send me a letter or something like that to find out what's going on. And if there's a day in court, or if there's anything questionable in that capacity, that's what we do. We'll take it forward from there.
So the complaint will come from the public, not a organization or agency that there may be some things in question. That's what I'm understanding. It's the public that actually initiates this.
Yes, the public would initiate that, unless it's another agency that see that we're doing something wrong, or that maybe I have a deputy. But what they would probably do is bring it to my attention first, because me being the head, me being the boss, I don't see everything. That's why I have department managers, department heads that run every department. See, my chief deputy, James Jefferson, that's sitting here to my right, he handles everything on my lightweight. That's what James does before it gets to me. When it gets to me, I consider it to be a very serious matter. When it gets to James, James addresses it before it gets to me. Danny is his assistant chief, and then we have department, we have our warrant division, we have our garnishment division, we have our court division. You know, we have several different divisions that has supervisors that run that. And if the supervisors feel that there's a need for questioning or a need for some type of attention, then that's when they'll go hire and go through the chain of command to find out what's going on before it gets to me. When it gets to me, then Houston, we have a problem.
Well, I want to say on Mr. Jefferson's behalf, I've had some dealings with him, and he's an excellent servant. I've worked with him in a number of capacities, and I've been very, very pleased with working with him. The last question that I have, and like I said, I'm glad that Ken's bringing some of this up, because when I was at the city, you know, we dealt with city marshals, but you know, you don't always know always don't know everything that they do. They have a very, very important role, but you really don't know. You assume a lot of things that's not true. My next question is, in terms of your jurisdiction, I try to pick that up whenever Ken was, Commissioner Epperson was questioning you. Your jurisdiction goes within the city and outside the city too?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have Ward 4 Caddo Parish, which encompasses us to go past out towards Southern Trace, out beyond Southern Trace. We go all the way out to north end of town, out to the Morning Sport line, and you know, to the bridge, you know, of Barksdale. So that's how we do it in west end of town. We go all the way out to the.
So it's not the total parish then. It sounds like you're describing boundaries.
Yeah. It's Ward 4 of Caddo Parish.
Okay.
And we have Ward 4 of the parish. So we're outside of the city's jurisdiction. I think we have 3 precincts outside of the jurisdiction.
Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrell. Other commissioners, I just want to let you know, we typically have a 15-minute time limit on visitors. I want to respectfully give all the time we can to Marshall Caldwell while he's here. I see 2 more commissioners on the board. I just want to let you guys know that we've hit that mark. So if we can try to wrap this up, but I definitely want to give you guys the opportunity to speak and welcome Marshall Caldwell down. So we'll hear from Commissioner Cawthorn and then Talia Farrow.
Good evening, Marshall Caldwell.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Cawthorn. How you doing, Commissioner?
Doing great. I don't have but 2 questions for you. First question is, on a percentage basis, as it relates to the functionality of the Marshal's office, how many arrests do you guys do just in the normal course of carrying out the business of the Marshal's office?
Yeah, arrest?
Yeah.
Woo. Our arrest, I can get back with you on the arrest, but it's a pretty high number, because every day my warrant division is out every day executing warrants. So that's all they do every day is go out and execute warrants. And I have 3 or 4 guys that gets out and do that. A couple of my reserve guys, along with my warrant team, gets out and they every day they execute warrants. So I can't give you a total of the arrests on a daily basis, but I would say a day, it'd probably be anywhere from 15 to 20 arrests.
Okay, well, that answers my question, because what I wanted to do was to put a fix in my mind the level in which you guys have to arrest people, so I wouldn't be conflating what you do with just more or less handing out summonses and court appearances.
Yeah. See, it goes above and beyond that. Thank you, Commissioner. Gotcha. It goes above and beyond that. A lot of people, you know, they just think the Marshal's office, oh, y'all just deliver subpoenas. Oh no, it goes way more than that. You know, we'll arrest people, and we may go in on a misdemeanor warrant, as I mentioned earlier, and it could turn out to be a felony, and which we plenty times when we come in, you know, and have to arrest with drugs, have to arrest with guns, have to arrest convicted felons that are in there that, you know, possessing firearms or in there with drugs, different things like that. So we've done it all. Felony stops. I mean, everything. You know, we do it all. You know, we got lights and sirens. We got ticket books. We write tickets. We write it on a need basis. We don't write that, you know, we try to leave that up to the police. But if you blatantly disregard or violate us, you know, just go, oh, that's a marshal, I can fly past him. We got officers that are trained in speed clocking, visual estimation, different things like that. And we have cameras that shows the speed and everything. Every one of my vehicles are equipped with cameras. Every one of my deputies have body cams. So we keep up with the program.
Got it. My last question is it true ain't no opening in the marshal's office?
God, ain't no opening in the marshal's office.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Cawthorn. Commissioner Talaferro, wrap it up.
Okay. Hey, Marshall. Hey, James. How you doing?
How you doing, man?
Hey, so everybody gets a better appreciation of what y'all do, and I can speak for firsthand knowledge.
Yes,
wouldn't you agree that a majority of your time that your officers spend in the field are spent serving warrants, and either in solo or in concert with other law enforcement agencies? And if that's true, what would be the percentage of your engagements with the public are either high risk or low risk? And I think you answered that question earlier regarding, you know it well as I know, that when you go in on a misdemeanor, sometimes it turns into a felony, and sometimes things get kind of dicey, as we say. So just so people have a better appreciation of what you do for us on a day-to-day basis. Could you just kind of share with them a little bit about that?
Jim, I'm glad you brought that up. Jim, you've been over Crime Stopper for a number of years, and I've been in a lot of the Crime Stopper meetings where you've read on a lot of our situations where we were some of the first, my deputies were some of the first ones to do some of the major arrests. I mean, first degree murder, second degree murder, we just happen to stumble up on it and it happens, but it's one of those things that we have done it. We get a lot of intel because I have a couple of deputies that dealt with, that still deal with the intel, that deal with the narcotic, division. I've trained them in narcotics, bombs, flashbangs. I mean, we do it all, and it's very high risk. We just had a deal on the second degree murder guy that we just went in the house the other day where the parents said he wasn't there, and he ended up sitting there in the back room. We thought it was going to turn into a hostage situation because he had his 7-year-old daughter in the bedroom, and he ended up letting her go out. And then that's when my deputies had to go in, full force on him, and he had weapons in there. But it's a difference. And like I say, I try to make sure that my deputies are equipped with the proper body armor, proper weapons, everything that they need when they make entry into these dwellings, because they know we're on the outside, but we don't know what's on the inside. So that's the dangerous thing. And Jim, because you've been wearing that badge for over 25 years, so it can get dangerous. It may start off minor, but it can definitely escalate in a matter of moments. Yes. So it's very high risk. Yes, sir.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner Talaferro.
All right, Commissioner Talaferro, that wraps that up. Thank you.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Yes, Commissioner Everson.
Now, anytime if everyone hadn't spoken, we can always vote to extend the time. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
Correct. Thank you. Everyone spoken? I'm through.
I want to thank you, Commissioner Everson, for having me. I want to thank you, Mr. President Chavez. I want to thank you guys for having me and my Chief Deputy, James Jefferson, here on you all's panel. It's an honor to be there with you guys. I know most of you guys, and most of you guys know of me. I know of you guys. We know of each other's honor and each other's integrity. So, gentlemen, y'all keep up the good work, and we will keep up the good work and keep the tradition going in the Marshal's office. Thank you guys again for having me and Chief Jefferson.
Thank you, Marshall Caldwell, Chief Jefferson.
Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Mr. Everson, next order of business.
Yeah, that brings us to reports. And before the administrator report, I'd just like to draw your attention that we do have the certificate of teleconference attached for today.
Thank you, Mr. Everson.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Pray that everybody's well today.
Good afternoon, Dr.
We only got one item for you today. Just want to make you aware that the May monthly financial report has been mailed to everybody, so you should have gotten a copy of that. And I would encourage you to take a close look at it. You'll see the revenue and expense trends going on in the parish currently as of May. So that's a good indicator of what's happened in the last few months with regard to our current situation. So, and other than that, sir, I don't have anything else.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Commissioner, we're moving on to communiques. I see Vice President.
Whoa. I got a question for the administrator.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
Got Vice President Johnson. Go ahead.
Dr. Wilson, did we ever find out anything about Benton Steel and those tax incentives that they received, and now that they're having this layoff, about getting some of that money back?
Okay, Commissioner, I don't have an answer for you today, so
Okay.
I do apologize for that. But I know I did get a letter most recently from them. Did indicate that it was temporary because of the downturn in them being able to get supplies and other things because of the virus. They couldn't get what they need to sustain production. I think that's what the issue was. Not that they're not going to bring people back.
Okay. Also, while you checking on that one, check also on Libby Glass as well.
Yes, sir, I will.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Vice President. Commissioner Jackson. Commissioner Jackson, you on the board? Or is that just?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to ask Dr. Wilson if he could, or Haley or whoever is on, if they could, I got the report, but I'm not a numbers expert. If they could just kind of give us a very quick and short kind of, I was told that all numbers and charts tell a story. So if they could give us the synopsis, I guess the digest version of what these financials tell us.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Haley, are you prepared to do that today, ma'am?
Are we up? Are we down? Are we flat?
Yeah.
It just, good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. The financials that you received in your email are a comprehensive list of every fund across the board. And so if we want to talk about those, it could be quite lengthy. So if you have a specific question, I'm happy to answer it. But as far as the revenue stream, which is what most of you guys are concerned with, I have been keeping up with how that, not the property tax, because we haven't gotten the assessment yet, but I have been keeping up with the oil and gas trend, the riverboat, and how that's trending. And currently, I was trying to pull it up. Currently, the riverboat money has gone down during, obviously, the closure. The oil and gas money, however, is going up. So that's good news for us, but I don't know what that is attributed to or how long that will last. Sales tax also is down in the month of May by 14% from the month of May last year in comparison. So sales tax in May of 19 was 995,000, and May of 20 it was 856. Video poker is holding steady. That was another one that we thought might be a little volatile because of the COVID. But I guess because most of the video poker being in convenience stores and such like that, it remains steady. So we've seen a 45% decline in riverboat, a 3% overall decline in sales tax so far, and oil and gas is up. So I'm happy to forward this on to the ones that would like to have it.
Yeah, and Commissioner Jackson, with respect to the oil and gas revenues, I did have a lengthy discussion with Mr. Robert Glass last Friday, and he informed me that there's an increase in the amount of drilling activities taking place in the parish, and that's why we explained the increase in revenues for oil and gas.
Okay. So, Dr. Wilson, just your big picture snapshot. Are you worried, or you think things will just work themselves out? Just big picture.
I think, Commissioner, based on previous discussions we have had relative to the importance of having sufficient funds across all funds, and particularly the Reserve Trust Fund. The Reserve Trust Fund, as we talked about in the past, has enabled us to be able to sustain ourselves even in the downturn that we're currently facing. And then I think it'll be a lesser impact. We don't know for sure until we get a little bit more data on the numbers. But I'm not concerned at this point because we had saved for moments like this.
Okay.
And that's what the Reserve Trust Fund is for.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Any other commissioners who would like to address administration? Commissioner Epperson, go ahead.
No, not the administration.
Oh, okay. I see no others. So Commissioner Epperson, you can lead us off on communiques.
Okay, June 25th, 1950 was the start of the Korean War. Let us not forget. Also, I'd like to acknowledge and for our prayers to go out for the Reverend Wilbur Dawson family. We lost Reverend Dawson earlier this week, and our prayers goes out for him. Very, very strong individual within the community. That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Epperson. Commissioner Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to go on record by stating that the death of Floyd George was a regrettable tragedy. I hate to see that type of thing happen in any community. I'm thankful it hadn't happened in ours recently. I hope it will not happen ever again. I am supportive of fair and equitable policing practices for all people. I'm supportive of fair and equitable treatment for all people. And I'm supportive of fair and equitable opportunities for all people. That being said, there are a couple of items on this agenda which I will not be able to support, but there are several that I will. But I just wanted to give the context for my decisions on my votes on agenda items moving forward by making that statement. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. Any other commissioners like to get on under communiques? Commissioner Jackson, go ahead.
No, that's an accident. I'm trying to mute.
Oh, okay. All right. I see no other.
Mr. President, I'm sorry.
Yes. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I just want to remind the Juvenile Justice Committee members that we have a meeting on Thursday at 2 p.m. by Zoom.
Thursday, 2 p.m.
It's actually 1:30. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. 1:30.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we have another meeting that was scheduled for 2:30.
We did. We had another one that was scheduled for 2:30, and then that one was canceled, but was filled in with another meeting. So that kept us at our consistent time at 1:30.
1:30 p.m. Juvenile Justice Committee members.
On Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Watts. See no other commissioners. I'll yield my president's report till Thursday. However, I agree with Commissioner Epperson on my condolences with the passing of Pastor Dawson. I'm sorry for your loss, Commissioner Epperson. I didn't personally know Pastor Dawson. However, I knew both of his sons, the football coach at Evangel, as well as I served with his other son in the Army. And I can definitely say, by judging the character of both those men, they had an amazing father. So again, I'm sorry for your loss. Mr. Everson, we will move on to old business.
Old business, we have none at the moment. And so we move on to new business. And our first item of new business, 11.1, is authorize the introduction of ordinance number 5960 of 2020. It's an ordinance amending the budget of estimated revenues and expenditures for the Riverboat Fund to provide an appropriation for the Salvation Army's Boys and Girls Club for funds remaining at December 31, 2019, and to otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Commissioner Brown.
Oh, well, I guess I'll move first. And
I'll second.
All right.
Getting familiar with your procedures. I just wanted to comment on that. The Boys Club is in my district, and it's a very, very nice facility. They had a transition of the lieutenant, a new lieutenant and his wife that has come on board. And during that transition, the program director that they had did not make them familiar with the funding that they had, and then plus they had some programs that they had to shut down going through the transition, and it has taken them into this COVID. They really need the funds. They are doing feeding. Also, I talked to him the other day, and he said, "Well, we're going to need additional funding because, as you know, they provide food for the homeless and sheltered families." I had an opportunity to go over there and go through their facilities again because it was in my legislative district, so I was very familiar with them. But it was also in my council district. The Boys Club was, and they do a great job. So, the $10,000 that was left over, they can really use it. And I will be working closely with them on their programs to make sure that when they expend it, they will be accountable for it, because you do have an accountability process. And if they don't spend it and they can't account for it, then, we have a procedure for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrell. That was seconded by Commissioner Cawthorn, and I have Commissioner Atkins that would like to speak, and then Commissioner Lazarus.
Thank you, Mr. President. Obviously, we've already allocated these funds. They just weren't spent. In my mind, once we allocate funds, they're kind of oftentimes out of my budget. I think it's I don't want to motivate people to feel like they have to spend everything up or they lose it. I don't really like the use it or lose it kind of philosophy. So I'd be supportive of extending them some additional time to spend their funding from 2019. I think the Salvation Army does a great job, and they're dedicated public servants. So I don't have a problem with giving them additional time to spend the money that was previously allocated to them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. Commissioner Lazarus.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to say that thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say I think the Salvation Army is wonderful. Many years ago during a flood, the Salvation Army helped my family, and I give these people every chance I get. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to abstain on this vote to avoid any appearance of impropriety. My son is a board member for the Salvation Army. I know it's an unpaid position. I'm gonna have to abstain. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Lazarus. Commissioner Hopkins.
You muted, Todd.
Okay. My question is to legal. This is money left over from 2019. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So it ends at December 31st. So did they do a new application for 2020?
They did an application for 2020. They were allocated 2020 funds, but in order for them to carry, we don't do any funds carry over.
Right.
So the funds from 2019, if they're going to utilize that on top of what they already have for 2020, have to be reappropriated.
Okay, so they are getting an increase for 2020 then.
I do not recall what the amount was for 2020. As of right now, I believe you all are about to vote to suspend payment of those funds. So I'm not sure what the amount was for 2020, if it's the same amount or a decrease or whatever.
Okay. It had me confused because I knew it ended, our money ends at December 31st, and it can't be sent over for 2020. We have to reappropriate it. But if we already appropriated funds, then we're actually increasing the appropriation that they originally asked for, or that we okayed, I guess.
You will be increasing essentially the funds that were appropriated already for 2020.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. A point of information, Mr. President.
Yeah, Commissioner Brown, hang tight 1 second. Let me allow Commissioner Jackson to speak, and then you're on the board right after him.
Thank you.
Yes, I was just going to clarify that I think we agreed to suspend the Boys and Girls Club and the Salvation Army as a whole for 2020. Todd, this is to your question. We agreed to suspend their appropriation. The resolution that we're about to vote on was the one that pulled the Salvation Army out because we identified that they had dollars left over, and so. It's not it does not represent an increase. It basically is a continuation of what they already had. And so that's why we were specific about not doing the 2020 appropriation.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson.
All right.
Commissioner Burrell. Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Commissioner Burrell, does that help out? I have a feeling that was the same question.
Yeah, that helps some, but I just want to make sure that we keep in mind that, again, that these organizations are expending funds because of, I know in 2020, because of what has taken place with COVID, their expenditures has gone up. It's not that they've stopped their services. Matter of fact, they've increased their services in many cases, some of these organizations. So I just want us to keep that in mind.
Commissioner Jackson, I see you on the board again, or is that laid over?
No, that should have been from the last time.
Okay. All right. I see no other commissioners on the board. Mr. Everson?
Commissioner Hopkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Cawthorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Gage Watts,
Yes.
Commissioner Taliaferro,
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lazarus previously said he was abstaining, and Commissioner Epperson.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries with 11 in support and 1 abstaining.
Mr. President, a point of information.
Yes, sir. Mr. Brill.
Just as a clarification, Commissioner Lazarus abstained. Just for my information, that wouldn't be considered a conflict, would it?
Well, his family member is a board member, and the way the ethics reads is it's us having a financial gain with somebody immediately related to us, which that's his son. And I know he may not receive any economic impact from that. However, he is on that board, and they would be receiving the funds from us that he would be voting on.
But that is not a financial gain, and the ethics deal with personal financial gain or gain by your family members. I'm just saying as a clarification, because I've gone through this ethic things for 20 years. So I was just saying that because I didn't want to be confused that somehow it was a conflict.
Mr. President, as the parliamentarian, may I suggest we get Ms. Frazier's input on that matter, just for clarity?
Can we do that offline?
Please.
We already voted on it. I mean, let's move on.
It was just a point of clarification with me.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I take care of that offline?
Sure, absolutely. And I think the better safe than sorry thing may be a good rule of thumb. But Mr. Everson, we'll move along.
Okay, we're at 11.2. That's authorized resolution number 41 of 2020. It's a resolution amending and reenacting resolution 34 of 2020 of the Caddo Parish Commission, adding legal aid of North Louisiana to exceptions of the suspended 2020 NGO program and to otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Moves to Thursday.
Second.
I think that was Commissioner Epperson made the motion.
Jackson.
Jackson, all right.
Who was the second on that?
Epperson.
Epperson. I had them backwards. All right.
Johnson made the second, but that's
okay. Johnson.
Commissioner Jackson, would you like to speak on that motion?
This is, I know we took out the Boys and Girls Club on last time. We took out the Salvation Army. This is just basically adding legal services. What I have asked the administration to do is, since we're doing this in response to COVID-19, this was not something that was adopted in our budget at the end of December, at the end of 2019. And so I strongly believe that this qualifies for that reimbursement, since we know that I think our unemployment sits right at about 14% right now. And we know that a lot of companies are closing permanently. And so some of those companies have individuals that were kind of borderline. And so they'll need to have to clean up their, I guess they call it clean up their jacket before they can go to some other areas. And so I know we originally tried to do this just in general to do it, but it's more pressing now than ever. And the fact that we can be reimbursed from the CARES Act will actually give us an opportunity to recoup those funds, because it's workforce retention related to COVID-19.
I see no other commissioners on the board. Sorry, Mr. Taliaferro, go ahead.
I just one quick question for Commissioner Jackson is what are we expecting legal aid or legal services to do to, I guess, to expunge a criminal record so they can gain employment? Is that their job? I just need a kind of clarification on what we're expecting them to do. My bad.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Actually, what they will do is there has to be somebody that walks them through the process. There are fees associated with that, and those fees can get quite high. And so when we're talking about individuals who are already pressed for resources, those fees can get pretty heavy and hefty. Legal aid is going to donate their services. I want to say their dollar amount is about, I want to say there was about $30,000 that they're going to donate in legal services free of charge to representatives, and they will walk them through the process. Mike Spence's office is the one that's actually charged with actually filing the paperwork and getting those fees expunged. And basically what we're essentially doing is offsetting the cost to the district attorney's office and offsetting the cost to the Caddo Sheriff's office and offsetting the cost to the clerk of court's office to basically grant those expungement waivers. There was a law that was passed in Louisiana, I want to say maybe 2018, that set up the framework for individuals to be able, for those entities to be able to grant waivers. And so we're basically just doing the funds that are being set aside will essentially just go to those entities. We can't just make an appropriation to those organizations, to the sheriff, to the DA, to the clerk of court. And so legal services basically will be walking those individuals through that process.
Okay, I appreciate the educating me again, Commissioner Jackson. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, the easier way we could have we could have just sent the money directly to the clerk of court, to the sheriff, and to the DA. But my understanding from Ms. Terry Scott, who works over at Legal Aid, is the law doesn't allow for it. It has to be done through a process because I believe, Attorney Frazier, I believe they have to go before a judge to have a judge agree to the expungement. There's something that goes on that you kind of have to have that middle person or that individual do that process. The organizations, the entities themselves, we can't just send them the money and make it look like Caddo Parish is doing that for them. It's some kind of.
Thank you again.
Thanks, guys. Commissioner Hopkins.
Mr. Jackson, so this basically is putting ordinance number 5943 that we passed back in February back into play. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. This is basically adding them to the exception.
Okay. Thank you.
So yes, thank you. We already passed.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Mr. Everson.
Commissioner Hopkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Cawthorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Gage Watts,
Yes.
Commissioner Taliaferro,
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lazarus,
Yes.
and Commissioner Epperson.
Yes.
That motion passes with 12 in favor. That brings us to 11.3, which is authorized resolution number 42 of 2020. It's a resolution to authorize the Caddo Parish Administrator to request
Move
an
to advance to Thursday.
Second.
All right, motion to advance by Commissioner Vice President Johnson, second by Commissioner Hopkins. Commissioner Johnson, you want to speak on that?
No.
All right. I see no other commissioner on the board. Mr. Everson?
Commissioner Hopkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Cawthorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Gage Watts,
Yes.
Commissioner Taliaferro,
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins,
Yeah.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lazarus,
Yes.
and Commissioner Epperson.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes with 12 in support. And that brings us to authorized resolution number 43 of 2020, a resolution of support for the Federal Justice and Policing Act of 2020 and otherwise providing with
Move
respect
for
to
Thursday's agenda.
Second.
Second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Epperson, second by Commissioner Cawthorn. Commissioner Epperson, would you like to speak on your motion?
Just like for everyone to click on some of the policy research as well as do some more research on your own between now and Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Epperson. I see no other commissioners on the board. Please vote.
Commissioner Hopkins,
No.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Cawthorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Gage Watts,
Yes.
Commissioner Taliaferro,
No.
Commissioner Atkins,
No.
Commissioner Chavez,
No.
Commissioner Lazarus,
No.
and Commissioner Epperson.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries with 7 in support and 5 in opposition. And we move on to resolution number 44 of 2020, a resolution designating June 19th of each year as Juneteenth Independence Day in Caddo Parish in recognition of June 19th, 1865, the date that has become widely associated with the emancipation of slavery in the United States, and to otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Move to Thursday.
Second.
Motion to move forward by Commissioner Jackson and second by Commissioner Watts. Commissioner Jackson, would you like to speak on that motion?
I think this is just kind of something that we could do to recognize Juneteenth and make it a standard holiday. I know that there are efforts on the way to try to do more to recognize Juneteenth along with other holidays such as Kwanzaa, put more emphasis on the actual education of Juneteenth. It's more than just that individuals were notified that they were free from slavery and the cavalry was late notifying them. So there's an opportunity to talk about and educate individuals on the heritage. And, I'd like to see Caddo Parish do more with regard to activities and just whatever we need to do to plan to educate the public, educate our citizens about the importance of this particular day.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. I see no other commissioners on the board. Mr. Everson?
Commissioner Hopkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Cawthorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Gage Watts,
Yes.
Commissioner Taliaferro,
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lazarus,
Yes.
and Commissioner Epperson.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously with 12 in support. It brings us to our next item, authorized resolution number 45 of 2020. The resolution urging and requesting law enforcement agencies and heads of governing bodies within Caddo Parish to retrain officers regarding chokeholds and restraints and to otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Move to advance.
Second.
Motion to advance by Commissioner Johnson, second by Commissioner Watts. Commissioner Johnson, would you like to speak on that motion?
Not at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Hopkins, is that you waving?
Yeah, yes.
Go ahead, you have the floor.
I would just like to say on the part where it talks about the different bodies, the mayor of Blanchard and the mayor of Vivian do not have control over those police departments. Those are elected chiefs, so you might want to change that. Say chief of police for Vivian and Blanchard. Greenwood and Hall City, 22. It would be the mayor for those two.
Commissioner Hopkins, I think we lost the last second of what you were saying. Can you restate your last sentence?
Said the mayor of Greenwood and mayor of Hall City do have control because they appoint the chiefs, but Blanchard and Vivian, it would be the chief of police with the authority.
I take that as an amendment.
Commissioner Hopkins, are you offering that up?
I'm sorry, I'm through. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Got a friendly amendment by Commissioner Johnson added that Commissioner Hopkins made. I don't see any opposition. That'll pass by acclamation. Commissioner Taliaferro, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just some clarification on Resolution 45. As a former law enforcement officer, it does say, whereas banning these techniques and focusing on less dangerous apprehension. To my knowledge, police departments have never been taught or trained in choke holds. They have been trained in what they call lateral vascular restraint or carotid, and it's not dangerous apprehension. It used to be a long time ago an apprehension technique when we didn't have the tools that we have. But now, since we do have the tools, I think you'd be hard pressed to go back into any police department or the sheriff's office and find out when a LVNR, lateral vascular restraint, or a carotid restraint has ever been used as an apprehension technique. I'm really cautious, if not opposed, to having any legislation which takes that completely off of the board. And whatnot, when I mean is that this is used as a last resort when an officer fears that he will be or she will be losing their life. And it usually happens in the instance where they are actually on the ground fighting. So I think a lot of people confuse chokeholds with the lateral vascular restraint or the carotid restraint. The chokehold becomes dangerous when the LVNR does not work. And oftentimes police departments have found that when the LVNR is not applied properly, then a chokehold can occur. But again, this is not typically used as an apprehension technique. It is reserved, I'd say reserved, for that officer who is in their last ditch efforts fighting for their life. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Taliaferro. Commissioner Johnson and then Commissioner Atkins.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Taliaferro, I believe that is the proper way that it might be trained upon back in the day. But when in the heat of the battle, sometimes you might skip 2 or 3 steps and go straight to that. And what this resolution is doing is trying to eliminate that step up to that particular restraint or lateral chokehold, whatever you want to call it. What made me put this on is we actually had a training officer with the Shreveport Police Department that basically said that they trained at the academy to do this. And it was on social media. And so if that training officer was that bold to say, well, this is how we train our officers at the training academy, then I think that this warrants us to have the resolution for them to review the training techniques that they have. And based upon the training techniques, that they would either remove this particular part of it or do away with it altogether. I mean, I just don't see where we need to keep that in as a guideline that they could actually use, and then say, well, we got to that point where my life was in battle, but evidently it wasn't. I just don't want that to happen anymore. We've had many incidents in which that has happened, and the person didn't die, but they got in a chokehold. So that's my reason for putting this resolution on, along with all the other that's going across the United States, that the chokehold is being used to restrain individuals on the ground that's already have handcuffs on. So I just think that it's part of the outcry that citizens are saying that we need reform. And this is our way of saying that, hey, we don't have a law enforcement agency under our umbrella, but we do stand and support the citizens across the United States.
Mr. President, if I can address that, I'm Commissioner Johnson. I am familiar with the training officer who did mention that, and I think what he said is that that during the administration of the LVNR or the lateral vascular restraint, that oftentimes in the heat of battle things can go awry and it turns into a chokehold. And I think the incident that we were referring to was neither a chokehold or a lateral vascular restraint. It was someone's knee placed directly on the neck of a suspect who was already in custody and, to my knowledge, required no further administration of force. And we all agree, I think this was very tragic and unnecessary, unprofessional, and that officer is will be tried and receive due punishment. And it is true that the reason a lot of departments, and I'd be hard pressed to find a department that actually uses the LVNR, it's called a couple of things, the sleeper hold, whatever you call it, but cutting off the blood flow to the brain to cause the suspect or the person in custody to, I won't say custody, the person to actually pass out. But there are safety maneuvers that obviously we're all taught to actually wake that person up prior or after everything is ceased. So again, I am not in favor of removing that completely off the table. It is not in the force continuum that I know of. And I've gone to many retrainers in which at no time since the 80s have I ever been retrained or reschooled in the lateral vascular restraint because it is so difficult to perform. It is, unless you are an MMA or a professional wrestler or someone of great strength and height, it is difficult for a 5'4" person to take down someone such in your stature, a 6'2" individual, using LVNR. And again, this has been put on the back burner for quite a while and only reserved, and I say reserved, and that may not be the correct word. It is only used, to my knowledge, when an officer is in danger of losing their life and there's no other resource available to them in their arsenal of the force continuum. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Commissioner Taliaferro. Thank you, Vice President. You still have the floor.
Well, I just want to say that to Commissioner Taliaferro, you probably live in the perfect world of how policing is, but growing up in the inner city in the hood, as I would say, I've seen that chokehold put on individuals from as young as 16 years old to full grown adults, and to the point of that they not passing out, but it was to the point to restrain them. And so I guess what I've seen in my eyes as a non-police professional, but as a child growing up in the inner city, I've seen that a whole lot, as opposed to just if their life was in danger. So
And I respect that.
To me, not only George Floyd's death, but there's been many deaths across the United States where they had a chokehold as a restraining measure and the person died. So I think right now is the time for us in Caddo Parish. I believe that the mayor of Shreveport has already talked to the chief of police, and it's already banned in Shreveport now, based upon what I saw in the news article over the weekend. But I just think it needs to be parish-wide, and not just with Shreveport. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I got Atkins, and then Burrell, and then Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can support this resolution because I think it's intelligently structured and responsibly presented. In particular, it makes reference to retraining officers regarding chokeholds and restraints. I think we can all agree it's appropriate to take given all that's occurred in these recent weeks and certainly in years in the past, I think we can all agree that it's appropriate time to take a look at how these quote unquote chokeholds are used and ensure that if they're ever used at all, that they're used properly and safely. So for those reasons, I could support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. Commissioner Burrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just sitting there listening to Commissioner Talaferio, being a professional in this area, and we are not. I'm just interested to know, just based upon what he said himself in terms of apprehension, are there various levels of apprehension techniques before you reach a point where you use the lateral vascular restraint or the chokehold? If not, then it sounds as though it is pretty much left up to the beholder, the individual that's there. You understand my question?
Yes, sir, I do. And Mr. President, if I can address some of. Yes, sir. While I am not a training instructor in defensive tactics, I have received my fair share of defensive tactics, and each year defensive tactics change. But none of us, unless this is your chosen hobby, are MMA fighters or grapplers, wrestlers, or boxers. And this is why we have the what they call the force continuum. And the force continuum actually is designed to where you don't necessarily go from point A to point D in the administration of force. This is every department. You heard Marshall Caldwell. This is for his department. This is for all post-certified departments. This is nothing new. And so in my experience, the only time I've ever used an LVNR is when all other forms of subduing a suspect have failed, and either we've gone to the ground or someone's trying to get my weapon or my mace. We didn't have tasers at the time. Yes, I am kind of old school in that respect, starting my law enforcement career in the 80s. But again, I am concerned, obviously, with the verbiage saying that I don't want an officer that is fighting for their life to be prosecuted, for the issuance or the using the lateral vascular restraint as a last-ditch effort to save their lives. That's all really I'm saying. I'm saying it has a place. And the place of normal apprehension is not it. And you're right, Commissioner, in that the officers on the scene typically make that determination on the level of force necessary to affect the arrest what force that's going to be used. Typically the person that is being engaged is directly responsible for, I'd say directly responsible for the engagement of that officer to some degree. So in answer to your question, Commissioner Burrell, I am not a proponent of a chokehold. I am not a proponent of a lateral vascular restraint, whatever you're calling it. The only time that I am a proponent of using it is when all else fails. Every method of apprehension has been exhausted. You're by yourself, you're outnumbered maybe as far as weight, height, and so forth. Only you know whether you feel that your life is threatened or not, and you make that decision. What force is going to be necessary to effect the arrest, and then you kind of live by that afterwards during the investigation. So I don't want to be misconstrued as I'm all for it. I just don't want it to be an issue where an officer is prosecuted for using this as a last-ditch effort. And keep in mind, that is up to the officer writing the report. Only he can determine how much in fear of losing his life he is.
Well, again, Mr. Chairman, the main reason I asked that is because whenever you're in the heat of battle and adrenaline is flowing, can you make a determination between the fact that you are afraid of the person that you're apprehending, or the person is just kind of overpowering you, not necessarily putting your life in jeopardy? They may be just trying to get away from you. And through whatever means, if you're not properly trained, you may wind up using this hold and ending somebody's life because of fear or because of maybe the lack of strength. That was my whole point.
I understand. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hopkins, then Cawthorn, then Watts.
Okay, I think there's others that have already that haven't talked, and I've talked once.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that, Commissioner Hopkins. I'm going to push you underneath Commissioner Watts. Thank you for that. Commissioner Cawthorn.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I want to briefly say, I'm consistent with the comments that Commissioner Johnson made and the nature and tenor of his resolution. I want to also just quickly chime in and say, I know that the George Floyd murder is the one that's most prevalent on people's minds, but as it relates to Commissioner Johnson's resolution, the Eric Garner case is a perfect example of a chokehold gone awry, with 4 officers standing there and then see the need to exert a chokehold with 4 officers there. And then you had the classic, the assailant is 6'3" and the officer is 5'4". So it's a classic example of a chokehold going awry. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Watts. Stormy, you there? You're on mute, Stormy.
Thank you. I'm off mute now. Thank you, Mr. President. I think a lot of the sentiments have already been expressed about the reason for introducing this legislation. Across the world, there has been comprehensive pieces of legislation introduced that is proven with data that has been collected. There are new levels of accountability for civil and federal from banning chokeholds and other practices. And I think that it would be advantageous if we join them in banning these practices. So I ask that you all would support this legislation.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Epperson. For the time, Commissioner Epperson.
Okay, call for the question on the motion.
Second.
All right, we got a call for the question and a second. Mr. Everson, I'm sorry, yeah, Mr. Everson, please roll call.
Commissioner Hopkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson. Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell.
Yes.
Commissioner Cawthorn.
Yes.
Commissioner Gage Watts.
Yes.
Commissioner Taliaferro.
No.
Commissioner Atkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez.
No.
Commissioner Lazarus,
Yes.
and Commissioner Epperson.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries with 10 in support and 2 in opposition for the call for the questions. So now we go to number 45, for resolution 45. You want me to start the roll call?
That was 45, wasn't it?
That was
Yes.
the call
That
for
was just a call for the question.
No, that's just a call for the question.
You want me to start the roll call for the resolution now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Cawthorn,
Yes.
Gage Watts.
Yes.
Thank you. Taliaferro,
No.
Atkins,
Yes.
Chavez,
No.
Lazarus,
Yes.
and Epperson.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries with 10 in support and 2 in opposition.
Mr. President, this is Ms. Frazier. I just want to get a clarification from the clerk. That's with the understanding that the mayors of Greenwood, the mayors of Oil City and Blanchard would be changed to police chiefs. Is that
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. I appreciate you saying that. Yes, that was a friendly amendment that was accepted by acclamation.
Thank you.
But that was Vivian and Blanchard.
Vivian
Right.
and Blanchard, okay.
Right.
Yeah, I have Vivian and Blanchard on the official agenda. Okay, that brings us to, let's see, resolution number 46 of 2020. Authorizing resolution number 46, a resolution urging and requesting the Louisiana legislature to.
Second.
Second.
Motion to advance to Thursday from Commissioner Watts, seconded by Commissioner Burrell. Commissioner Watts, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thank you, Mr. President. Sure. Commissioners, I introduced this legislation originally in 2018, and I want to thank those who were commissioners during that time who supported this resolution. However, it has recently gained national attention, highlighting Louisiana as one of the 35 states that currently has this law. As stated in the body of this resolution, Louisiana law currently protects inmates, not detainees. Commissioners, we have an obligation to encourage legislators to change current policies to prevent any woman or man from possibly experiencing by protecting them from this unethical behavior. I respectfully ask for your support of this resolution, once again, with optimistic hope that legislation would take necessary action to protect detainees and clean up the language of this law in Louisiana. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Watts. Do I see other commissioners on the board? I see none. Mr. Everson.
Commissioner Hopkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Cawthorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Gage Watts,
Yes.
Commissioner Taliaferro,
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lazarus,
Yes.
and Commissioner Epperson.
Yes.
That motion passes with 12 in support, are unanimous. That brings us to resolution number 47 of 2020. That's a resolution urging and requesting the state legislature and local Caddo Parish governments to pass legislation addressing law enforcement officers wearing and use of body cameras and use of dashboard cameras to ask all law enforcement agencies within Caddo Parish to administratively implement the requirements of said legislation and to otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Move to advance to Thursday.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion to advance to Thursday from Vice President Johnson, seconded by Taliaferro. Vice President, would you like to speak on that?
Yes. I've researched this particular resolution across the United States and kind of meshed a lot of stuff together to put it together. I just heard that City Marshal Caldwell, all his officers wear body cameras and they have dashboard cameras in their vehicles. So he's already in tune to this particular legislation. Just want to make sure that we have it not only in Caddo Parish, but across the state as we do travel within our state. And we want to make sure that all citizens are protected as they travel and have encounters with law enforcement. In the recent 2 cases, you haven't heard of the footage from the body cams yet. And from the DA's office, there's a lot of stuff that's missing from the reports of the 2 cases where the 2 gentlemen were died in custody. This particular legislation has their body cam on anytime that they are engaged with the public, and they cannot cut it off until that engagement is over with. I think this is for everyone's protection, the law officers and the citizens that are being questioned or either apprehended. So I think that it's direct, straightforward. It really doesn't have any loopholes in it. And I think that this is something that we should do again, since we don't have law enforcement up under our umbrella, that we urge all the agencies that do to look at this, to review it, and to implement this as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President. Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, I would actually ask that we add the constables to this. I was kind of not paying attention to the other ones, but if my understanding is correct, we actually have a direct responsibility for the constables, and I think they're on our insurance. So if something goes wrong, we're liable. I think we pay them, and so just whatever we do, I would want to make clear
Constables
that this
are on here.
includes the constables.
It does. Check the last paragraph, next to the last paragraph.
Okay.
Thank you, Vice President. I see no other commissioners on board. Mr. Everson?
Commissioner Hopkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Cawthorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Gage Watts,
Yes.
Commissioner Taliaferro,
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lazarus,
Yes.
and Commissioner Epperson.
Yes.
This motion passes with 12 in support and none in opposition. And that brings us to authorize resolution number 48 of 2020, a resolution supporting the federal government's efforts to rename military facilities named after Confederate soldiers and remove Confederate symbols from the Capitol through the National Defense Authorization Act and other means, and to otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Request to move to Thursday. Second.
Second.
Motion to advance by Commissioner Epperson, second by Commissioner Burrell. Commissioner Epperson would like to speak on that motion.
Just ask that everyone between now and Thursday would educate yourself. I think it's about 20 or 23 military bases that fits that category, and educate yourself on those members that it's named after, and we'll deal with it on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Epperson. I see no other commissioners. Mr. Everson?
Mr. Hopkins,
No.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Burrell,
Yes.
Mr. Cawthorn,
Yes.
Mrs. Gage Watts,
Yes.
Mr. Taliaferro,
No.
Mr. Atkins,
No.
Mr. Chavez,
No.
Mr. Lazarus,
No.
and Mr. Epperson.
Yes.
And that motion passes with 7 in support and 5 in opposition. And that brings us to our authorized reappointment to Sewerage District number 8. It's the authorizing of the reappointment of Mr. Miles Turner, Mr. Jackie Tipton, Mr. Charles Merriman, Mr. Howard Clayton, and Mrs. Alma Pettaway to the Sewage District number 8 board.
Moved by the
Move
chair.
Thursday.
That was Commissioner Everson. I'll second that.
Move for
Motion-
Thursday.
Motion advanced by Commissioner Everson.
Second.
Second. Was that Hopkins?
That'd be fine.
Atkins?
No, it's mine.
Got it. So motion to advance by Everson, second by Commissioner Lazarus. Mr. Everson, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hopkins,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yeah.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Burrell,
Yes.
Mr. Cawthorn,
Yes.
Mrs. Gage Watts,
Yes.
Mr. Taliaferro,
Yes.
Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
Mr. Chavez,
Yes.
Mr. Lazarus,
Yes.
and Mr. Epperson.
Yes.
That motion passes with 12 in support and none in opposition. That brings us to, and before we start this discussion relative to the immediate upgrade of visual audio and telecommunications systems, I do want to remind you all that we did expand the agenda to include one more item after this, which is the resolution regarding the renaming of Fort Polk. So just a reminder. But the point where we are in the agenda now is the discussion relative to the immediate upgrade of visual, audio, and telecommunications systems in the meeting chamber.
Commissioner Epperson, go ahead,
Yes,
Commissioner Epperson.
I think the administration know my sentiments and hopefully our sentiments. I think our communications and some of our video equipment is probably woefully obsolete. And I would think that it would, well, I know it would be in our best interest that we would upgrade it. If we can't do it in-house, then I would ask that the administration would go forward with an outside company to come in and give us a seamless form of communication. You never know what situations would arise. No one ever dreamed that the Twin Towers in New York would be run into. No one never knew that the Oklahoma bombing would have happened, Oklahoma City bombing. And we never realized that we would go into a health pandemic, whereas we would have to use telecommunications. So I think we need to make sure that we upgrade our telecommunications as well as our video and audio communications. And hopefully this may be something based upon the situation that we can recover the expenses through the CARES Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Epperson. Commissioner Hopkins and then Burrell.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that there is a government chamber committee that is the Caddo Parish Commission president, vice president, and past president, along with the city of Shreveport, city council members that are part of this chamber group, the chamber use group. They probably need to meet because Shreveport usually leads on the changes inside that facility as far as the chambers go. So they probably need to meet and come up, the clerks and that body of 3 each, and discuss what changes need to be made. If we have any changes we want to do, we ought to give them some information on it, but let them meet and work on that.
Commissioner Hopkins, that group is meeting on Thursday at 2:30,
Right.
so we can share this.
One question, Mr. Chairman, if no one else is on the board.
I got
Okay,
Mr. Burrell. I got Mr. Burrell, and then I'll yield to you after that. Commissioner Burrell?
Well, I was just going to follow up now that Mr. Hopkins did bring that up. When we first set up the communications in that chamber, I was on the city council and worked with them to design that telecommunications in there, since I was a telecommunication engineer at the time. But it's my understanding that the city does pretty much control that entity, and unless we've changed the policy on this, where the commission has lead on there, then we would have to work with them in conjunction.
Point of information.
Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
I just wanted the point of information on what Roy just said, that the city leads basically control what goes on in that chamber.
Not
Dr.
control.
Wilson. Well,
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Wilson,
Go ahead.
don't the expenses on that chamber is 50-50?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is 50-50.
So it should be no lead. It should be working together to get what both parties want, and not
That's
just
correct.
one lead and one lag. So I know what probably has happened in the past, but we need to change that. We need to get involved and make sure we're on the front of what we want to be in that chamber too.
Yes, sir.
That's all I'm saying, Roy.
Well, I think I qualified myself by saying that at the time, they were the one who was responsible for it. That policy may have changed. I don't know if you heard that or not, but I did make that statement. Okay. Well, that's what that meant. And and given that, I think we could do a better job if we work together. If we are 50-50 investing in it, then we would have 50-50 say, I would think. But at the same time, I know that from my own past experience, I know that they were one that took the lead at the time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrow. Well said. Vice President, I know we'll be meeting on Thursday about that. So any other commissioners that have any updates or basically recommendations that you'd like to see, definitely shoot them over to VP and myself, and we'll have that addressed this Thursday. Commissioner Epperson and then Commissioner Jackson.
Okay, just a question. Didn't we have a situation with some masks that didn't we agree to pay the city's part based upon their fiscal status now?
Commissioner Epperson, is that a question for Dr. Wilson?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Restate the question, Commissioner Epperson.
Didn't we have a situation on the purchase of some masks, whereas we pay something that we paid the city's portion of it because of their fiscal issues now?
Yes, sir. It was not masks. It was the disinfection of the entire building.
Okay, right. Okay, and how much was that?
$21,000.
Okay, all right.
And we took the lead.
Mr. Hopkins hit the nail on the head with that committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Epperson. Commissioner Jackson.
I was just going to add, if we could add Wi-Fi or our internet capabilities too, whatever that discussion is, but I'll shoot it in the email.
We got
okay.
That was add Wi-Fi in the chamber.
Our internet capabilities in there, because it's pretty bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioners, I see no one else on the board. So again, any recommendations or opinions, please shoot them over to VP and myself. And this Thursday, we'll address those with the chamber meeting. Mr. Everson.
That brings us to the agenda expansion item, which is a resolution urging and requesting the consideration of renaming of Fort Polk. And if I don't want to state it wrong because I haven't seen it in writing just yet. But Commissioner Epperson, did you want to say it correctly?
In the event that the military posts are renamed, I urge that Congress would rename Fort Polk on behalf of a Louisiana Medal of Honor recipient of the Vietnam War era.
The chair will second that. Commissioner Epperson, would you like to speak on that?
No, sir.
I do have a question. Commissioner Epperson, are you a Medal of Honor recipient?
No.
I'm trying to see if we're going to get a Fort Epperson.
If I did that, I'd be rich.
Do I have any other commissioners on the board that would like to speak on that? I see none. Mr. Everson.
Commissioner Hopkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell.
Yes.
Commissioner Cawthorn.
Yes.
Commissioner Gage Watts. Commissioner Gage Watts. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then Commissioner Taliaferro.
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez.
Yes.
Commissioner Lazarus.
Yes.
And Commissioner Epperson.
Yes.
That motion carries with 12 in support and none in opposition. And that brings us to citizens' comments, late arrivals. Oh, I'm sorry, that brings us to communiques and committee reports.
Any commissioners want to get on the board? Go ahead and hit the participation button or wave at me. I see Commissioner Burrell. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't mention this earlier, but Reverend Ernest James, who is one of our renowned ministers here in the city, he, I believe he passed may have been last week to COVID. We've lost a number of ministers, especially minority African-American ministers in the city that has played a prominent role in moving the city ahead. And Reverend Ernest James was one of them. I just wanted to recognize him. The other communique, I guess I could have.
Was that Ernest James or James? James?
I thought it was Ernest James.
Last name is James.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's Ernest James.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you.
If not, I stand to be corrected.
John Henry James, I'm familiar.
Henry, John Henry James. That's his name, I believe.
Okay, because I hadn't heard about Ernest James. Okay. Magnolia.
Yeah, Magnolia.
Yeah, that's him.
Thank you. Had me nervous.
Yeah. Okay. Then I stand to be corrected, as I said. But he has been very instrumental in his involvement in the city, especially in the Allendale area. The second thing is I sent an email to you all asking Chief Prater to come and be with us in a public forum. We do have a meeting that the clerk is rescheduling because Chief Prater agreed. We had a long conversation. I want to say that I appreciate. I call him Chief Prater because we go back to the city council, but it's actually Sheriff Prater. He doesn't get offended by me saying that. But anyway, he agreed that he would meet with the vice president and myself initially, and then from there we can go forward. Because as a new member, I've noticed that there seemed to be some contention that may be there that we need to work through. And since we do not govern him, I think it's more important to have a better relationship between the commission and the sheriff's office to get the information that we need, because he is the law enforcement officer for the people in the parish. For that reason, I wanted to take the opportunity to put that together. And secondly, I wanted him to come in a public forum because, as you just saw with the marshal, there are questions that is asked, and then other commissioners feed off those questions to get a better understanding of their role and what they are doing. So for those two reasons mainly are the reasons why I asked him to do that, and he agreed. We just have to get the date down. I have to be at a meeting at the Red River Waterway Commission because I'm a commissioner down in Natchitoches on Wednesday, and we initially had it set up for Wednesday at 10 o'clock, but the clerk will change that. The third thing that I have on my agenda is the Juneteenth fireworks. In 2015, I sponsored legislation, a statewide piece of legislation that we could sell fireworks on Juneteenth. It was done in order for us to better educate our community on Juneteenth activities, and hopefully it would get the kids interested in understanding what Juneteenth was all about. It was more of an educational piece. I was trying to think of the lady who asked me to do it. I thought her name was Kamala. Miss Kamala lives on Lakeshore there, next to Elmo Bryant's architectural place. That's all I know. I'm trying to get the name. But she was instrumental in asking to put that bill forward. I didn't think it was going anywhere, but I got more bipartisan support for it than I really thought I would. And I was surprised that there were more, pretty much more white that knew what Juneteenth was about than the black legislators during that time, which was very surprising to me. So again, those are the three things that I have on the agenda. If you like to look at the bill, it's HB 298, Act number 67 of the regular session of the regular 2015 session. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jackson.
Yes, I'm hoping my battery doesn't die here, but I just wanted to note that on Thursday we will have Chancellor John Pierre from Southern University's Law School that's going to join us to give us a formal. This will be a very momentous occasion where not tomorrow, but on Wednesday, the Board of Regents will finally give the green light for Shreveport to be home to a law school. It is not going to happen overnight. I sent the proposal out to all commissioners a couple months ago, and it is a phased approach to where we will scale up over a 2.5, 3-year period to a full-fledged 4-year or 3 to 4 year law school in downtown Shreveport. And so that's something that I know that our parish and our city has worked for well over 20 plus years. And so to have the Board of Regents finally give that green light and have Southern University, I think a lot of people missed that aspect of it, of that board meeting on Friday, was their board signed off on that as well. And they're excited. There's a lot of momentum behind it. And so once the Board of Regents gives that green light, it's going to be an all hands on deck. It's going to be time to really show and prove that we can have a successful law school here in Shreveport that can serve this area. This has been an ask that we have had for years and years and years. And so we will be putting together a working group. Dr. Pierre will want to put together a working group. Some staff has already been hired in certain capacities to specifically work on getting this law school up and going. And so there's no turning back at this point. So I want to thank everybody who's been supportive. They're still going to need our support. And I look forward to having Chancellor Pierre join us on Thursday after the Board of Regents gives their official green light on Wednesday. My other response is going to be to piggyback on what Commissioner Burrell said about Juneteenth. I would question anybody motives, particularly African Americans who are out there complaining and harping about the parish recognizing Juneteenth as a official holiday, no more than we recognize any other holidays in the parish, educating people about what we do. And for folks like John Glover, her opposition and her concern to me does not matter, because she is paid for and bought. And I would encourage her to look up who Shirley Chisholm is, since she doesn't know much of her history, because she can learn a lot from Shirley Chisholm, because John Glover is paid for, bought for, rented, whatever. And there's nothing that she can tell me or explain to me about Juneteenth or any other holiday or any other day that's designed to talk about and reflect and commemorate the freedom and independence of African Americans. She's probably the first one in line buying firecrackers and barbecue on July 4th. But here she is today being paid and put up to object to Juneteenth, your own heritage. I wonder if she got any mirrors in her house. And so I resent the email that I just got from Ms. John Glover objecting to, and I want to put that on the record, objecting to the parish recognizing every year Juneteenth. That's not something that I'm going to sit back and be passive about. And I've sat back and watched her be a political prop and a political hack for folks out there. But that's something that I'm going to speak up and speak loudly about, because our ancestors have fought and died and bled in this country. And to have people play that kind of game is unacceptable, in my opinion. And so I'm glad that we moved that resolution forward, and I would ask us to consider adopting it on Thursday. And if Ms. Glover has an issue with it, I would strongly encourage her to dive into a history book. I believe she was a former educator, to go back and get educated on the history of Juneteenth. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. I got Commissioner Burrell and then Cawthorn.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to ask Commissioner Jackson, just tell us exactly how he feels. But since we know,
I don't think y'all got a
trying to
censor
be
button.
facetious.
I don't think y'all got a censor button on here to really tell you how I feel.
But I agree with them. I think it's the time has come where we can all work toward things that we can celebrate. And given the fact that we are just getting through this COVID, there's other couple of things that a group is working on, trying to move our economic development in our city ahead. A letter today was going to be sent by pushed by Congressman Mike Johnson, along with another group of political leaders, community leaders. The commission has already sent a resolution on I-49. It's supposed to go to the governor today, a signed letter to him supporting that effort. And hopefully we can move forward with that, because we can definitely use a shot in the arm after COVID. Again, as I said before, on the Juneteenth fireworks, when I got the bill passed, there was opposition. There was a little opposition here, saying that I could have spent my time doing something better than passing legislation for fireworks on Juneteenth. But I recognize that the person who criticized me in the Times for doing it had no interest in Juneteenth as a holiday, let alone the fireworks. But at the same time, that person is no longer with us, and just like time, everything changes with time. So stay here long enough, and things will change for the better, hopefully. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrell. Commissioner Cawthorn.
Good evening, Commissioners. I just want to very briefly give a little context to what Commissioner Jackson said as it relates to the Juneteenth and his problem with whoever the lady, whatever her name is. I think what has happened historically in America, at one point in time, when we look at the different sides of the aisle, our white brothers and sisters, our black brothers and sisters, for us to celebrate Juneteenth as Independence Day suggests that 4th of July doesn't exist. So that was a narrative, that was a thought process one time in America. Now, in the 21st century, as we cascade ourselves toward what is considered freedom, that's no longer, I feel, no longer objectionable to our white brothers and sisters. They have come to the conclusion that there were some things that we've done historically in America that we are ashamed of. But as we move down the road, we can put all that behind us. And so I don't see any problem with the African-American community celebrating Juneteenth and our white brothers and sisters celebrating Juneteenth, because for people of African-American descent, that was Independence Day for them. And so I just think in a modern day context, we got to do a much better job of just putting it out on the table. These are sins of the past. How do we move forward? And the whole crux of America is supposed to be a melting pot, which means that there are no natives from America. Everybody that resides in America is an immigrant. And it came from wherever they came to, whether it's in the halls of ships, on the Mayflower, or through Ellis Island, and made America their home, and they can celebrate generations of people who have lived here. So at the end of the day, if you want to celebrate the 4th of July and be African American, do so. If you African American want to celebrate Juneteenth, then you should feel confident to do such. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
$14.2.
Commissioner Chavez, are you muted?
Yeah, no, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. My phone had to plug it back up. All right. Moving along to citizens' comments.
We have not received any late arrival citizens' comments.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion to adjourn and a second. Commissioners, see you guys on Thursday. Thank you, Mr. Everson.
Thank you all. See ya.
Yeah.